Welcome, A Plus community. We're back again with yet another interesting podcast discussing fundamental yet emotional kind of topic. We're talking how to deal with academic setbacks and failure. But before we get into that, please make sure you are on to all our social media platforms, be it Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. If it's YouTube, we have quite a number of sessions from our regular webinar meetings where we've discussed a number of fundamental issues just like this one here. So be sure to check out our YouTube channel. I'm not alone. I'm joined by two of my colleagues who helped me delve into this fundamental and important topic. I'll allow them introduce themselves.
Hi, Jack, and hi, A Plus community. My name is John Glory, and I happen to be the president of the A Plus Student Foundation.
Hi, Jack. Hi, John. And hi, A Plus community. My name is Katende Joy Chingwe, and I am the Vice Programs Coordinator for the A Plus student community.
All right. So these are, the people I'm seated with today who help us understand this topic deeper. So, if you do not know what the A Plus Student Foundation stands for, there's another podcast prior to this one that was like our first ever podcast. We did a good job in explaining everything that concerns the foundation and what we are all about. So be sure to check that out. Also, links will be posted on our Facebook platform that would direct you to our WhatsApp pages. So yeah, be sure to look out for our socials. Getting into the topic, how to deal with academic setbacks and failure. Firstly, before we even go any further, I would like to get definitions from people. John, how do you define academic setback?
Oh, wow. Thinking about academic setbacks is something that I've actually been thinking about prior to, of course.
And okay, before we even go into academic setbacks,
Yes,
let's just talk setbacks generally before we even get into the academics. How do you define setback?
Oh, okay. So setbacks. So for setbacks, on a personal level, I think I want to define it on a personal level, and I'm not going to give you, a straightforward kind of a definition, but I would say that a setback is actually, when you have a certain expectation and there is a break or that expectation not being met. So if we are going to bring it into academics, then it becomes, you have certain expectations academically and those expectations are not met. Yeah, so I think that's in a nutshell how I would define setback.
Great. That's a great definition. There are great minds here as all A Plus students, right? So I'll go to the Collins Dictionary because John's mind has done everything that our minds can do. And the Collins Dictionary will define a setback as an event that delays your progress or reverses some of the progress that you have already made. And I think that's such a powerful, all-encompassing definition too. Yeah.
I feel, that does, a great job in defining setback, as it were. And one man once said, for each and every person that tries, chances are that they will fail at one point. But also, it's almost imperative that they will succeed, provided they continue irrespective of the failure. So, even as we live life, we will come across these setbacks. That goes without saying. So now, coming to academic setbacks. Firstly, I would like to get it from you guys. Starting with you, Joy. What was your experience with an academic setback in a nutshell?
Can we even not show it? Anyway, what was my experience? Wow. Of how can I'm thinking of how to bunch it all in 2 sentences or
Okay.
3 because it's such a long period of time as it is for most of us. But my experience was that it challenged everything that I ever thought about myself and everywhere I ever saw myself before that time. That's what my experience was. It challenged me. Not challenged me like mathematics problem, but no, it challenged my belief system about me. That's what it was.
So when you talk about it challenging you, in what aspects specifically? Is there a specific aspect of life, say your business, your finances, your religious life? Which aspect?
Okay, great. I wouldn't say business because it's in that time that I actually got to do something outside school that would like generate more income, right? Um, it challenged my belief, what I had believed about myself. So we all grow up with people affirming certain things about us, and the affirmations do not come without evidence for most of the time. As you are growing, you are getting your A grades, you are the first in your class, and all these things. And so those things are things that you grow up believing about yourself that, okay, I'm an A plus student, as we are, right?
Yeah.
But then you come to a point where the A plus doesn't show on a script. So do you still believe that? Because it's not on a script anymore. So my A plus was based on a script and not based on who I knew I was, even outside the script.
Wow, I will be getting to that a little later on, but hold your thought right there. Let's get John's view, rather his experience with academic setbacks.
Okay, let me ride on what Katende has said, because obviously, before you actually deal with a setback, you have a track record of a certain performance that you've had academically, and you find yourself in a place where things are not going as they should, and that can actually break you. Yeah, that can actually break you. And regardless of where you are at, I think that can actually break you. So my personal experience is that when I was faced with my setback, of which maybe if we have time we'll be able to share it, it really challenged me to the core, and really broke me, in the sense that I got to ask a lot of questions, got to ask a lot of questions, of course, about myself. And sometimes that can lead you to ask questions of God. Yeah. So for me,
What would you say is one question that you constantly ask yourself in that moment?
Am I good enough? Am I good enough for what I'm pursuing? Am I in the right path? Okay, is this what I was meant to do? Is this who I am? So you get to ask those questions, of yourself and of what you stand for, just like Katende has said.
Wow, interesting. So now, going back to you, Joy, you mentioned one, and I feel this is really, really the main reason why, people with a track record of success in a certain field find it really, really hard to get past, setbacks. Because many other times a C plus student will not be affected when they get a D, but definitely an A plus student will be affected when they get a C. Okay. So like, what helped you cope in that moment? Understanding all too well that people have this expectation of you and they have this perspective of who Joy is. And then all of a sudden, what we think you are does not resonate with what's transpiring. How did you handle yourself in that moment?
I like the question. How did I handle myself?
Yes.
Because I think before you handle the event, you have to handle yourself.
True.
Because you feed into the event anyway. How did I handle myself? It was hard. Honestly, it was hard. The first few days and weeks into me having to redo my academic year, I didn't know how to handle myself because I found myself crying, outbursts of tears and crying and yeah. But over time, what I began doing, because what the situation put me in was that, as I said, I questioned myself. Though it challenged me and my belief system. So I had questions of what if you are not that, right? Running through my mind constantly. Or you are not this. In fact, it was not even a question of what if. It was that you are not what you thought you were.
Because you almost get the conviction.
Exactly. You are what your script says you are.
Exactly.
Right? And so probably you are not able to actually run this race that you started. Probably you don't have the right stamina, you don't have the intelligence, you don't have what it takes. So how I handled myself in that regard, because I had so many doubts in me about myself, was constantly affirm or speak what I had always known about myself.
Okay, so now when you talk about speaking what you had already known about yourself, it's almost as though, I mean, without doubt, we're talking about the positive aspects of who we are. I'm great, I can do this, I'm strong, I have what it takes. But in that moment, it's, I mean, those just seem like mere words.
True.
Of what importance is that?
So the importance is that whatever you speak, your mind will end up believing.
Wow.
From your words. We say yes, our thoughts, right? We are, as a man thinketh,
True.
so is he,
Yes.
right? But you realize that the Bible says, meditate and be careful. These books of the law should not depart from your what?
Mouth.
It's the mouth.
Yeah.
He didn't say the mind or the heart. It's the mouth. It's your speaking that allows you. What you speak of the most is what you're meditating on.
Okay.
So when I'm speaking certain things about myself, my mind will meditate on what I have spoken. And so that is what I'll believe beyond what it is that's in my heart.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you know, that, speaking of that, it reminds me of how, because like in that phase, majority of the time I was alone and in silence. There are a lot of things that used to go through my mind. And I mean, almost for each and every other person, there are a lot of things that go through people's heads. You know, others contemplate suicide. Others even go as far as, you know, executing it. Quite unfortunate. But I mean, it's the reality of the world we live in. And, you know, others give up. And so how then do you get to a point where you view yourself, as it were? Posing this question to John, you know, with regards to handling setbacks, I'll ask you the same question I asked Katende. How did you handle yourself?
Okay, how did I handle myself? All right, so I want to place a little bit of a distinction when we're talking about setbacks. So for me, there have been actually like two major setbacks that I've had to deal with. The first one was in my first year when I was supposed to, do my, first year. Didn't have, didn't have sponsorship for my, my tuitions, and then the other one was in my second year when I had to like redo a year. In medical school, that's reality. So how I handled those setbacks. So I'll start with the first one, of which I think is the same with how I dealt with the second one. Because one of the things that I kept on doing was I kept moving, and I think that should be one of the most important things that you should be able to do. Like you get to just keep moving. So I feel how I handled my setback, number one was, my mom has always, one of the things she's done for me is actually to raise me in the faith, and she's given me that thing to say, hold on to Jesus. hold on to Jesus. So if there are certain things that I have done, in whichever setback that I've had to face, was to hold on to Jesus. Trust me, it's very hard to see the future. It's very hard to see yourself in a better place when you are dealing with a setback, because it overshadows, it overshadows everything that you envisioned, everything that you thought about life, about yourself. Imagine you are expecting yourself to be at a certain place, and then all of a sudden your dreams of being at that place are shattered. So like in first year, no sponsorship, no bursary, no nothing, and then you just thought to go back home, with your 7 points, go back home because we don't have money to sponsor you. So so one, like I was saying, two things that I did was kept on going. It was very hard. There are thoughts that came to mind about ending it, or doing all those kind of stuff, but what was so strong was keep on moving. Keep on moving, and holding on to Jesus, I think, is one of the most biggest thing that I've gotten to do throughout my my short period on earth. Yeah.
So when you talk about you have to, keep on going, how do you keep on going? Because it's easier said than done.
Yeah.
It seems more like far better and easy to sort of like, throw in the towel and be like, you know what, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
How do you keep on going?
So let me be honest and frank with you guys and whoever is listening. It's hard.
Okay.
It's very hard, like somebody, you go to somebody and say, I'm going through this, and they're like, oh no, it's gonna be okay, just keep on, just keep believing, keep moving. It's
sounds so cliche.
It sounds okay, it sounds like, but when you are done with that conversation, you go home and you're like, what was it?
I mean, that person doesn't understand what I'm going through.
But it goes without saying, let me borrow a phrase, it goes without saying that you just have to do it. You just have to do it. Like, things may not make sense, things may not add up in the moment, but you have to keep ticking every day that comes. Obviously, you've learned from your setback. Obviously, you've gotten things that you had to get from your setback. You've gotten the pointers on where you went wrong, on how you can correct certain things, and then you have to go back at it and just keep going.
Would you say having that experience of being in this setback before makes it better when you fail again?
If I get you correctly, your question is
there such a thing as I have experienced the right exposure with regards to failure, so much so that even when I fail, it doesn't?
Okay, it does give you an advantage to a certain point.
Okay, what point?
To a point that, if you've dealt with failure, if you've reached the bottom, you've reached the bottom. Let me try to narrate one of the books that I read, that is of Donald Trump. He says, when you've found your way to make $1 million and then you lose it, it's easier to go back to that place because you've obviously had navigated through all those experiences that you had. So when you fail, you actually learn more than when you succeed.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's harder to go from failure to success than it is from success to success. So you actually get to learn more when you fail. So I feel like those that have failed before are at a certain advantage. That's if they've successfully navigated through their failures.
This one goes to Joy. Is there such a thing as successfully navigating through your failures? If so, how? Like, what's the right definition of this? Navigating successfully.
It sounds it sounds like I'm just trying to encourage someone, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not
True.
It's not tangible, it's not doable, it's not even a reality, but actually it's true. it's true because I have learned that success is not an event, it's a mindset.
Wow,
So
that's
just
profound. Okay.
because I did not make it to, and by the way, my friend texted this to me when I was sitting for supplementary exams, right? Texted other things and just encouraged me. And I missed that. Believe you me, I missed that because everything else was that, okay, I'm going to write this supplementary exam. I'm going to pass because God got me.
Yeah.
God got me and I'm studying. Okay. And then it was only after I repeated the year that I went back to those messages and I really saw what was being communicated to me, that it is not the event of you actually passing the supplementary exam. It is the mindset with which you walk through this period of your life that will define your success. So when I talk about success being a mindset, it means your mindset, how you choose to configure your mind as you go through setbacks is what would determine whether you are successfully going through it or you are going through it and you are going down spiral. So yes, there is such a thing as
You mentioned one thing, and that is God. I mean, God has my back. And more than anything else, I can trust that He will come through. And the reality with setbacks is that feels like he's really, 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 really far from you. How then do you get yourself to a point where you reconnect with God firstly? Because many other times when I was reading a text, because I was engaging with people from our platform, the A Plus community, and with regards to their experiences with setbacks and how they handled everything. And there was a trend. Majority of the people alluded to the fact that, once you hit rock bottom, you sort of like, because there's this sense of belief in God at first that he will come through. And after that happens, it's like a lover who disappoints you all of a sudden. You lose faith in them, and all the love that you had in them suddenly turns into disgust. Okay? All this belief that you had in God all of a sudden is now doubt. Okay? So then how do you get to that point where you realign yourself and get back on track with God, firstly, with God? Because I mean, I believe I'm speaking for everyone when I say, when you get to a point where you're communicating or you're in good terms with your God, it greatly affects who you are. The opposite is also true. The further you go away from Him, the worse things get.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's that urge to withdraw. Why? Because it didn't work. Maybe this is the main reason why I'm here in the first place. So how do you get yourself back?
Wow, that's a very profound question. Thank you so much. Let me just highlight one thing that Katende said. She was talking about mindset, and I love the set in mindset.
Yeah.
I love the set in mindset, meaning it's something that you have to do. Set your mind to a certain configuration,
Mhm.
and I think I should echo that. And coming to your question about how you maintain contact, and your connection with God in the face of failure and setback. Wow, I mean, like we are saying, this is a very emotional conversation, and things are easier said than done.
True.
Yeah, easier said than done. And let me tackle this personally. So I feel like, number one, it's very hard because in my definition of setback, I talked about expectation.
True.
And your expectations have not been met. I believe there are people who maybe would have received the prophecy, maybe,
Okay.
you're going to make it. They were in church, they were listening to a sermon or a
I see you
preaching, I
succeeding.
see you succeeding, it's going to be great. And you have all those expectations, like, Katende was saying, God's got me,
Mhm.
and then you just realize to say, oh, what happened?
Feels like you're all by
You're
yourself.
like, what just happened? Um, this is the God I was praying to every time I was going to write every paper, you know. And I didn't do anything. Like, my spirituality was intact. I was serving. I was doing all those things. There could be people with those questions. And
Where did I get? What
Yeah.
did I do wrong?
Exactly. Why does it have to be me? And
Why
we're
me?
usually, we're usually in the tendency of,
One person asked, if not you, then who?
we're usually in the tendency of, obviously, because we like, okay, that one is worldly, the worldly people have made it, they've gone through, and
You can't help but compare
exactly,
yourselves to them.
what's wrong, and so in the face of all those things that are running through your mind, it's very difficult to really get to connect with God, because you have to navigate through all those emotions, navigate through all those questions, and really understand, the place of God in your life, And it's also important for us to understand that God does not change regardless of what we go through. And His words, promises over our lives, do not change regardless of what we go through. And it's also important to understand God's time frame.
Okay.
May be very different from, our time
How
frame.
do you get to that point where you understand
How you understand this?
that God's time frame is different from, like, that understanding? Does it happen in the moment, or that's one thing you have to establish before you do anything? You have to understand that, okay, my expectations might not align with.
Exactly.
How do you get to that point?
I mean, everybody that's going to listen to this will be learning from what took some of, like, all of us, some time
True,
to
I mean,
gather.
yeah.
We've had to gather these things through that season, through that moment. We had to face reality. We had to face a lot of things, and so for me to tell her when do you come to that point, it's there isn't a time frame.
Okay.
There isn't a time frame, but it's something that if you can get a hold of, it changes your perspective and changes your life completely, because you get to become grateful instead of bitter.
Being resentful.
Exactly, because I remember I was asking one of my friends who is unfortunate to have gone through such, and I asked them to say, if you look back your life, let's go back to, say, for instance, you are a medical student and you are on part-time. Let's go back to first year and calculate how many people applied for med school
Wow.
and were not accepted in med school.
Okay.
You get to realize that you are among the few who were accepted. Then let's delve a little bit back to grade 12.
True.
How many people would have loved to have the points that you have, but who didn't have those points?
You're among a elite.
Exactly.
I mean, it goes without saying, the cream de la cream.
Exactly. And we go back to now start talking about financial issues. How many people would have loved to be in school, but when did have that opportunity because they didn't have the finances?
True.
They lost their parents. Some of them are in the streets. So when you look back at where God has taken you from and where He's brought you, and you look at the setback, you're like, sometimes I'll be like, I should have slapped myself in that moment, for being ungrateful, because you just get to point at that thing that has happened and you forget what God has done for you throughout the period. So I think That is how you get to maintain the connection with God, like getting to realize that God is God, and regardless. And one of the songs that has kept me going throughout my periods of failure is by Stephanie Gretzinger, King of My Heart. And there's just one line that she keeps on singing, and that is, "You are good, you are good," and understanding that in the midst of failure changes your life completely, because you get to realize that regardless of what I'm going through, God is good.
It has been an interesting session, sensitive as the topic might have been, but it has been an interesting session. Looking forward to having another one of this nature, definitely in the future to come. Being your host, Kalenga Jack Kayombo, and I was joined by John Glory and Katende Joy to discuss how to handle academic setbacks. Allow me to close with a quote from Nelson Mandela. The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but rising in every time we fall. So irrespective of how many times we fail, irrespective of how hard the situations might seem,